Hello everyone, this is Malika and Audrey and welcome back to another episode of Let's Unwind Season 2, Episode 1.
Well, it's been a long time since our last episode, last season.
I know.
I know. And we are finally back together.
Yay! In one room, in person, you guys. We are in the same room, same frame.
Yeah.
But we're very excited for Season 2 actually. We have lots and lots planned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be very exciting.
I know. And today we do have a special guest, and that's why we are here.
Yes, we do. I would love to introduce everyone to Prateek. That's here. A very, very good friend of mine, doing extremely well in the financial services industry, working for an esteemed international private bank. However, he's also a director, an author, a writer, an actor, and many, many more things. And that's why he's here with us today. Somebody who's very interesting to talk to, has a lots of stories about him, and something we can all learn from. So, yeah, without further ado, let's call Prateek to the stage. Hi Prateek, welcome
Hello.
to Let's Unwind Season 2, Episode 1.
Ooh, exciting.
How do you feel?
I feel this is like my induction right now. There's an intervention happening over here. But no, I'm so happy for you guys because, first of all, it's been a long journey for you guys as well.
Yeah.
And, I think just the theme of your podcast from season 1, if I have to just summarize it, had I been 20 and watching that podcast, how much could I have learned and, got the guidance? Because at the end of the day, we are searching for mentors every day. And looking back a decade, if I had a mentor then who was talking about financial advice, who was talking about lifestyle, who was talking about education, I don't know what decisions I would have taken then versus now, right?
Yeah.
So good work and kudos to you guys to take this initiative ahead.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. I mean, that's the whole point where we started this podcast, right? And it's really an honor to hear from you that if you were back in your 20s, if you heard from us what we do today, that's the whole purpose of it and vision of our podcast, which is to give people in their 20s or any person in this stage in life who feels feelings of loneliness, uncertainty. I think everyone feels that in their lifetime at one point, right? Or it could be multiple points in their life.
Yep.
Or all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
No, I think that is what is happening with this generation. I'm part of that generation as well, so I'm not.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah.
He's not.
But we understand loneliness, we understand boredom, but we are not aware of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you take the criticism that we get, our generation from the previous generation, is that we have shorter attention span, we are very distracted, we have multiple things going on at the same time, we're not focused. But I think that is what the demand of our generation is. The speed has increased, information is overwhelming, there's so many decisions to make, and simplicity is not a choice anymore. And at the end of the day, the awareness of emotions obviously comes out of scarcity, right, of information. So when you have people like you doing a podcast, or people writing self-help books, or people going out and motivating other people, it's just a reminder that okay, slow down, think about this. It is a distracted world, you have a short attention span, but that's fine. You can still get things done, right? So I guess this is where our generation really needs mentors, right? Really needs friends, families to come and tell us it's okay to be whoever you are.
Yeah.
Just follow this direction because I made this mistake,
Exactly.
right? So this is good. This is a good initiative there.
No, I agree, and I feel like now there are so many options in terms of what you can be as well. One feels more lost, understanding what they want to do with their lives, and there's so much distraction around you as well, and you often compare yourself with others because of social media and other things, that you always look down upon yourself. And I think that's why it's so difficult to figure out who you want to be. I think season 1 was all about figuring out who you want to be. I think that's what season 2 is a lot more about, discovering who you can be. And I think that's why we have you here, because I think you've had a very clear path in terms of your finance journey with this bank, and God forbid you've been doing very, very well. However, you also have this passion to, and that creative outlet towards acting and writing, and as a writer, as a director, and basically so many other things. But I think we both would love to know how you got started with this finance journey to start with. And
Yeah, for sure. I think pretty much my journey starts from insecurity and fear, right? Because at the end of the day, I grew up in a middle class family, like literally a lone child, so I never had a sibling. Whether that's bad or good, pro or con, I have no idea.
I feel you. I'm also a single child.
So that there you go, right? And I think one of the best decisions my father ever made was put me in a boarding school to make me independent. Because both my mom and dad, and one of the best mentors I had for the first half of my life, where you're not very aware of what the world is doing, so you're just going with the flow.
Yeah.
I remember them living a life of scarcity, but never letting me live that. So I always lived a life of abundance, right? Maybe it's pseudo abundance. Maybe I never knew what abundance is. So I just enjoyed whatever was given to me, and they made sure that I never felt the scarcity that they felt, right? As middle class family in Mumbai, right? And Mumbai is an expensive city. But as I went to the boarding school, for the first time when I went out from the comfort of my parents, and this is 7th grade in India, that is when I started becoming aware of what scarcity feels like, because that is when for the first time I started comparing myself with people, right? And oh, that guy has that, and that girl has that, and why don't I have that, and why don't I have that? And and the moment I started looking into that, I could feel myself for the first few months. I was never bullied, by the way, but I was bullying myself, right? And that is where the insecurity came in. That is where the fear came in.
Just constantly comparing yourself.
Yeah, because this comparison, jealousy, and you're fighting over things that do not even exist, and you want them, you're just not sure how to get them, right? And I think that was a very sort of a life-changing experience at a very young age. And I think what got me into writing, and writing has always been my base, irrelevant of what I do other than that, is just to get my thoughts written somewhere. Because at the end of the day, I was sort of a loner. I was not talking to much people then, living in my whole shell because I was scared. And I think writing got me out. I started creating these characters, these stories. And when I still have those notes from my 7th grade, and when I read them back, I still realize how much of maturity was building, And I was becoming a mentor to myself. There was not much of an internet access, but I was reading books a lot. I was talking to people who were much older than me because they were becoming my friends, and this could be like a security guard or a normal teacher who's like a physical training teacher who's just there and he's just talking to you, and you're learning, and stories became a part of my conversation, right? So when I came back after the 1 year in boarding school, I came back home. I could feel I was different. Every day I was waking up and I was sort of involved in the decisions my parents were making. Mm-hmm. I was talking to them the way an adult has to talk. Mm-hmm. And I think that is when I realized how much that insecurity and fear drove me in age, right? And I think that is very important, especially if you're a creative guy or someone who has that creative mindset, because you're very unhinged and you need some sort of a boundary to sort of stop you, and that boundary comes from understanding what this insecurity and fear and this jealousy meant. It's like that perspective change. I still had that jealousy. I was still comparing myself with people. It's just that my perspective changed. It became more of a respectful jealousy. It became more of a respectful insecurity, right?
How old did you realize that you were finally competent enough to sit down with your parents and be able to make the decisions with them? Because you said you aged a lot, right? At a very young age, I think you mentally matured a lot. So how old were you by the time you were able to sit down with your parents and make decisions with them, alongside them, and things like that?
I think I was around 12 or 13 or something like that when I was actually sort of having these discussions.
Wow.
And I think what was really helpful for me is that my dad has a very transferable job. So I was moving cities.
Okay.
So I was always making new friends. And my friends never stayed. So I already knew that things are temporary. I never assumed things are going to be permanent. Even the friends that I made in boarding school, like very much later in the term, one or two I remember. I still remember their faces, but I was never in touch with them, right? And I think when you're sitting at the adult table, especially with your parents, there's always this cushion of security, right? Because they're not going to say anything back to you. They're not going to, like my father and mother never shouted at me or hit me or anything like that. They were never that kind of parents. They're like, do whatever you want to do. We're always there to support you. So I think that sort of, I could have gone many different directions, I think this boarding school experience brought me into one direction. Okay, this is what I want to be. This is the kind of person I want to aim for. And I wrote my first book then. I wrote my first story, which I never published. It is still there. A lot of characters come from those stories. I still have that copy with me. But I think stories became a way I started expressing myself, and that became my identity, that I'm a writer. And everything else just followed it. So when you say from being that guy to becoming someone who's into banking now, is not actually a linear journey. It's actually a very zigzaggy journey. And I think that's fine. And that is where I was getting to my previous point, that in our generation, being linear is sophisticated. It's I think the complex ideas or complex decisions that you make come from living the zigzaggy life. Because if you're linear, there's no points where you're breaking down. And I'm not saying mental breakdown or emotional breakdown. Breaking down in the sense where you're facing failure. Because then that's a feedback loop.
Yeah.
So that zigzag helps you straighten your path. So I think that is, and in my book I write this line that, particles can either be in a wave function or a straight linear function. The reason they can mimic both, because they make up life and all that stuff, is because at the end of the day, that is how the characteristic of particle is. When you observe, it looks linear, but they're actually following a wave pattern, right? And that is how life is all about. When you observe, things look linear, but actually you're living a very wavy life. You're going ups and down every single day.
100%. I completely agree with that. I think, to me, when I first graduated university, to me, my mind was, okay, I'm just going to have this linear growth, right? I went into my first corporate job and I was like, this is going great, everything's going great, I'm going to have a great future ahead of me. And then we both resigned last year, and I think that was the first time I faced such a great amount of failure in terms of failing myself. I was like, how could have this happen? How could I let this happen? Things just spiraled out of control. Things out of my control was happening, and I couldn't get everything back into the way it was. Things were falling out of shape. And I think that was the first time I've decided to really embrace that life can be uncertain and life can change, regardless of whether you want to or not to change. I think that's the first time, and since then I've grown even more as a person. I've embraced the that life is just never a constant. Growth is non-linear, like you've mentioned, right? And I think it's always, life will be like that. We're still 24, 25?
23, Audrey. I am 23.
And I'm young. And I'm part of this generation.
Yeah. Okay, so going 24, going 25, right? I think, there's always this, I'm not sure how old you are, if you don't mind me asking.
32.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Still young.
Still young.
Very young.
But I would say, right, journey aside, I just out of this, just a quick question on the side, because you talked about, growth is non-linear, you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have failure. But what would you, because I think with the distraction of social media, with all these, motivational accounts, with all these, influencers who have all these, really luxury accounts, and people look up to them, right? It creates this false sense of I need to get there, I need to be them, this life is possible for me, and then it creates that rush and that time limit of I need to get there by a certain time, because with the effect of for example, women, we have that biological clock, and then for men, they also have their own sort of biological clock. To us, I think for the younger generation these days, they're okay, by 30 I want to be a millionaire, or I want to be rich, I want to have a certain lifestyle, and then sometimes we forget that 20 is a very long time to go. I had that time pressure all the time. To me, I used to think that, okay, by 30 I need to be of a certain person, I need to live a certain lifestyle, but everyone else was just telling me, you got a long life to go, you're young. And to me, I'm already thinking, no, I don't have enough time. So as a person who's already in his 30s, how would you advise that? What would you have to say to that?
Yeah, I think first of all, to your first part of the question, right? These motivational speeches and these accounts and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just a simple anecdote, right? So if I speak about, I come from India, we are very mythology driven, and one of the very big mythology stories that we have is called Ramayana, and there's a particular part where this this god who's like brawny and the strongest god of all, and he's called Hanuman. He's like our superhero. He's just there, and he does not know how he can sort of cross the sea to go from India to Sri Lanka to go to the kingdom of the evil. And then the god advises him or reminds him that you have this power to actually go there, right? You can fly, you can shape shift. And I always thought, why is this mythology sort of focusing on this aspect? Because he was cursed initially in that whole story, and then he gets reminded. So once he's reminded, he remembers his power, and he can do that. And why is that particular storyline so important in that mythology, right? And if you think about what life is all about, it is this. Every single day, we have this much energy, this much time. You wake up, you sleep, and a lot of it is very auto-function. So there's literally very few hours where you're living your original, authentic life, where you're making a decision for yourself or where you're choosing something. Yeah. If in that particular moment you come across someone telling you, you know what, you have this power in you, or you can actually do this, you know you have that, and that is why it sounds cliched, because you know it, you already understand it because you have it. It's just someone is reminding you that. So that is why I'm very okay with people doing self-help and being motivational gurus and all that stuff, because it's sort of a reminder that you have the strength in you and you can, cross the sea and conquer your evil. Now, getting into the hustle culture, which a lot of people get into, is I think that comes from the speed of information, right? Because the speed of information is so fast, because the commute of information is so fast, people assume that life has to live at that pace as well. But once you start sort of achieving things and getting into these big jobs and big companies, a big investment bank and all that stuff, a lot of it actually is for the discipline of it, not for the output of it, right? It's not that if you sort of live a hustle culture, it is going to take you to a destination faster. It's like during that time, the only reason your hustle is very fast is either you're trying to overcome an anxiety, an insecurity, or some kind of a fear that I might not achieve that, and therefore I have to make sure I achieve that. So say, for example, you're starting a startup. There are days that you will work for 18 hours or 19 hours straight, and there are days you're working for nothing at all. There are weekdays you're going to work, and there are weekends that you're going to work, but there are going to be days that it's going to be a downtime, and you're going to do literally nothing. If you take that as an aggregate, you're literally living a simple life, right? And same goes for a company. The only reason it's 9 to 5 is because it's 9 to 5, because that is how it is disciplined, because weekends are off, and Monday to Friday you have to come, because there's someone else controlling it, an HR department, or your boss is controlling it. So there's always some external person controlling it, and that is why you feel that you're hustling. But you're not. You're actually using the same time, the same energy. Yeah, it's just that there is an extra layer of discipline that's brought into it. But what I get to is that it's not wrong to hustle. It's not wrong to work hard. It's not wrong to be ambitious, that too at a very early age. But it's wrong to perceive it as the only means to the end. Yeah. Right? Because you still want to meet people. You still want to keep your relationships. You still want to maintain that social life. The question is, there is this need for self-awareness, whether you can actually do that balance. There are introverts who don't want to go out for house parties or go for that nightlife. They want to come back home and they want to chill and get up in the morning and go for their work. Yeah. That's fine. There are extroverts who want to be out till the wee hours of morning and then go to work at 8 a.m. and then come back and go for another party. And that's fine because they can handle it. So it's that self-awareness thing. How much can you extend yourself? Because everybody is given different sets of, human sort of behavioral patterns, and you understand your pattern and then you sort of hustle accordingly. And that is the reason you're unique. That is the reason we need you as much as you need us, right? And that is why we are functions of other people. So I think the hustle culture is different for different people in different perspective in different sectors, especially once you're balancing creative with, profession, right? That is where you'll start realizing it's not the hustle, it's more the balance that you're aiming for.
I truly feel like we just glorify the hustle culture so much more now because we just see the creative professionals on Instagram. You don't see a lot of professionals who are in 9 to 5s on Instagram as much. Yeah. And that's why you feel like, oh my god, what am I doing with my life right now? I shouldn't be going out and having fun.
Yeah. And in fact, there are so many people there just simply doing 9 to 5 and living a simple life.
No, but even people like who are creative and like who are going to events, they still have a simple life. They still have like few days from their week they spend with their family, not record.
Right.
Not everything is content, you know. And like I feel like a lot of people do live a simple life. The way they communicate, I think storytelling is so big in today's generation, and the way you communicate how you live your life is so different from a 9 to 5 person to a creative person.
Right.
That it comes across differently, but I feel like everyone is still living a simple life. They're not just glorifying it enough.
True, and I think what actually we are getting to is we are we are okay with the compromises we make so that we contribute something towards our dreams and aims, right? Maybe we talk less with our parents, maybe we talk less with our close ones, and we spend more time talking to our clients or business people or people who would help us grow further or something like that, and that is fine. I understand that there are certain sacrifices emotionally, personally, that you will always have to make. What shouldn't drive you nuts is the guilty conscience. If there is a guilty conscience coming in you, then I think you have to be first compassionate with yourself, right? And you have to do that analysis. Okay, why am I missing out on my parents? Why am I missing out on my family? Why am I missing out on these relationships? Is it worth doing what I'm doing? And is this sacrifice worth it? And that is where you can start having this different perception to the hustle culture. Because you have to understand, in our generation, again, I'm part of this generation. Yeah. The average IQ is generic. Most of the people now have good IQs because they have the same access to information. What really differentiates now people is the EQ, right? Because a lot of your work now is very business as usual. It's very operational. Like you take any corporate job, be it a software developer to anything, there are innovations happening. I'm not discounting people for their innovations and the ideas they bring in. What I'm trying to get to is that a lot of these jobs are very streamlined. What really is differentiating people is how they're managing their stakeholders, right? Be it in their personal lives, be it in their professional lives.
Right.
How are the people managing? What is the as she pointed out, how are we sort of communicating our ideas? Because at the end of the day, all you're looking for is for the top decision makers to make a decision for you, or you make a decision for them, right? And if you take any top decision maker, be it your boss to someone who's like a billionaire, what he's really looking for is how can you help him or her break down a complex idea in very simple terms, making it very easy for them to make a binary decision. Decisions are not binary. If you're taking binary decisions, that means you don't have enough facts. But if you can help them bring those facts up, then you're very valuable to them. Because then they can say yes, no, approved, not approved, okay, I'll invest, not invest, or something like that. You're helping. And that is what most of the companies are looking for now in people. I think most of the jobs are now entrepreneur in residence. Because they want people to take initiative, they want people to take ownership, even if they are 20 or 22 or just coming out of college. They want them to come up and start thinking okay, if I own this, what are the improvements I want to bring in? Or what are the stakeholders I want to bring in? Or how do I change that communication? It's no more about just presentations. It's no more about just consulting frameworks. It's more about, if there are 5 stakeholders, how do I bring those 5 people on the same page? And suddenly you're very valuable to them. Suddenly you're promoted.
At the end of the day, it's all about balancing, regardless, in the corporate world or in your own personal life. I think at the end of the day, it's about balancing, like you say, where corporates, your stakeholders, right? In your personal life, it's your parents, your friends, your relationship, your work colleagues, everything, right? And in the corporate, of course, it's your bosses, your colleagues, your employees, so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, it's all about people management. It's all about time management. It's having those skills in order to succeed on top of the discipline. The discipline encompasses how you manage that time and the people around you.
Yep.
And just on that very, very quickly as well, just I think just talking about my example as well, I worked at my first corporate job last year post-graduation, and it was a very new industry, and I had made major life changes to get to that industry and had a new life, new work life, new friends, new apartment, basically everything. And I feel I was I have to go to work. I'm only 22 now. I can literally work till 9 p.m., come home, and then do the same thing at 7 a.m. the next morning. And I think I did not really meet a lot of my friends, spoke with my family as much, or wanting to travel, because I was I'm sacrificing my work, and I think that's more important to me now. But I think one thing that I've realized now, looking back a year later, a year and a half later, is I felt like I was more mature EQ wise when I was at university, because I was traveling, meeting people, having experiences, and learning from them. And I think that's what made me valuable, as you said, my experiences as an entrepreneur, as someone who's competing at like a public speaking competition, or someone who's just traveling to Bali for like 5 days with her parents. And I think now, after I've left the job, it's not the job, it's more the mindset I'm talking about. Now that I'm still going out and traveling to new countries, meeting people, thinking about new ideas, I think that's what shapes me as a person. So I think I was the person who was like hustle, 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 but now I know hustle generally means balancing family, friends, yourself, traveling, and then working. I think that what shapes you as a person, that's what extremely important.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And how do you balance that? How do you balance between, because it's very, very different what you do between, your 9 to 5 and your creative outlet, right? You have your, 9 to 5 banking job in that, big bank where like everything is so bureaucratical, everything is so like systematic. And then you have your creative outlet, which is completely opposite. You have your books that you write, you have all these ideas. You're generally a very creative person. Like you said, you've been having all these ideas since you were a young kid. Like, why banking all of a sudden when you have all these ideas as a young kid? And then now how do you balance that between your life?
Actually, just on that as well, I think what was very intriguing for me was you said that it stemmed out of insecurity and fear.
Yeah.
Just to like add to what you said, actually, I have also, like, my success or whatever little it is, in terms of reassurance in myself, that has come through insecurity. So I can relate to like some level in terms of how one feels and how they want to outshine and basically put yourself at a place where nobody can touch you. And so even though you're insecure, you're jealous of a lot of people, like compare yourself, you feel like now I've done so much that they look up to me and they aspire to be my friend as the opposite way. And that's why most of the things that I've done from a little age have been for me, but also tick boxes and think to be at a place where I'm not feeling insecure anymore. Like, just to add to what Audrey said, how do you get into banking? Like, was the bank that you're working at like a tick box to like not feel that insecure anymore? Or
No, definitely. And I'm not even gonna lie. Like, to be very honest, at the end of the day, earning money, having sort of an influence, working for a big bank, having this LinkedIn sort of a history, those all things really add to your identity, right? Because, and it's not wrong. It's not wrong of society to take that as your identity, because people don't have enough time to know you personally, right? So if you want to reach out to 150, 200 people and you have to establish a level of trust, you have to build that identity. Right? It's about are you going to pay more for a quality brand over paying less for a very non-quality brand, right? What is the signaling that you're doing? So I think when you want to peel the onion layers of a person, the person has to create that onion first, right? Like, so I was creating those layers because of that insecurity and fear. And I think at the bottom of it, everybody has some kind of an insecurity, I'm not even generalizing it. Yes, there are people who are very happy and all that, and I should learn from them. But at least the people I saw in my life, and very few of them, most of them had some kind of an insecurity or some kind of a fear. So writing books, writing stories, being competitive, trying to make sure that I'm disciplined stemmed from the fact that I started realizing what scarcity was, even in that fake abundance my parents created for me. Because behind the doors I could see them arguing or something like that about, okay, we need to put money here, but we lose money there. This is gone. Parents are not there, and they were literally trying to figure out life as I grew up, because my mom got married at 18. I was born when she was 19. My dad was 20. So I was literally seeing them go through their entire career, and they were literally on the poverty line, and from there they've become this rich and affluent people. So I could see that journey arc, right? And once you see that of your parents, and I think it was after the boarding school that I became more aware, okay, this is happening in my life. I was like, I need to do something only from the mindset that I need to support him. Because I know they're gonna age, I know they're gonna grow old, and I'm the only lone child. And it's a nuclear family. I don't know where that thought came in, why that came in, but it came in very early on. And that was it. That was my only thing that kept me driving. And somehow I found this balance between being creative and being professional. There was a reason that I went to one of my engineering colleges, that is SRM in Chennai, which is in the southern part of India, where they actually signed a deal with the Indian Space Agency to create a satellite, right? And this was among the first student satellites ever being made in India, called SRM Sat. And there was this part of me that wanted to learn, but I think coming back to the identity crisis, right? You want to build this identity of skill, and you want to signal people that you're growing. And I think this was also for me to sort of get into the new house of the people and try to grow from there. And I think what I've noticed over there is that these 54 people who were senior to me were literally living a life where 7 o'clock in the morning they're ready for their college classes and all that stuff, and by evening after dinner they're back into the lab working through the midnight, and then morning 3 a.m. And this was a normal routine for them. This was a normal lifestyle for them because they were motivated towards an ambition. And I became part of that over a period of time. So somehow this discipline of hustle that many people would call became normal for me, right? And I think till today I live my life like that. Like morning 7:30 I'm already in the office, something like that. But by the time I come back in the evening, have my dinner, chill with friends. But mostly around 11 or 12 I'm writing. And many a times I'm writing till morning 3 and then waking up again. And it's normal for me. But obviously, it does compromise on certain aspects of whether, am I getting enough sleep or is my health fine? But I guess these are sprints that I do with myself. So when I have to write a book in a deadline or a theater script or maybe a movie script, so I'll give myself a month's deadline to finish them. And that is the time when I'll be having such a lifestyle. But then I also give importance to the recovery, right? And I believe that is something I learned way earlier in my life, that recovery is part of your of your well-being, right? So when I'm not doing certain things like that, I make sure that I get at least 5 or 6 hours of sleep, right? So this balance that comes through the discipline, and already you sort of spoke about it, that the discipline comes from balance, right? This balance comes when you have that kind of an experience, and I really thank the experience that I got from the satellite project to give me that initial sort of understanding of this is the lifestyle I can have. And that is why I could balance between having a career in banking, which is tough in its own way, but then also to do, say, stand up on a weekend or write something on a weekend and keep writing, right? So I think that is where I have, I somehow find reason. Not sure if that is something that everybody will echo with.
Right. I mean, I've got 2 questions to that, honestly, about that balance and everything else. The first one is you talk about you have your 9 to 5, right? And then you go out with friends, and then 11 o'clock you stay at the desk and you start writing until maybe 2-3 a.m. in the morning. Of course, it varies from day to day, but what happens when on a plus day or on maybe a very hectic season, you maybe have to OT for a bit, right? And then you find yourself with that lack of time to really focus on your creative outlet, which is the plays and your book. Or sometimes there's a really big deadline coming, but also at the same time it's very hectic at the office. How do you balance that? And also it's honestly a lifestyle that not everyone can be accustomed to.
True. I know. I totally agree to it, and there are days like that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about. I'm talking about consistency, but does not mean that you're consistent for 365 days or for 366 for the sleep year.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting to is that there are days when job is so hectic or very consuming emotionally, even though it was not that hectic, that you just don't want to write. But then what I make sure is that writing is the final sort of aspect where you're putting words into the paper. But there's also a lot of thought process that goes behind it, right? And whatever emotions you feel on that day somehow translate into your writing as well. So I let that be, and I sort of become aware of, in those hectic days, what kind of a person I am. And I don't know why I have this. Maybe it's a weakness that I have or something. But I'm very aware when I'm feeling low. And it happens many a times. I'm very aware when I'm feeling incomplete. Even in days that get very hectic. Because those are the days when you actually feel the least productive. The most hectic days are the days when you feel least productive, only because you feel that you've not got the job done, but you're stressed out.
Yeah.
Right? And those are the days when even your creativity takes a hit because you're just not in that mindset. But that's a learning in its own way, because that's an emotion, right? That's an emotion of a human, and that translates into a character, right? So I take it as an advantage. So I think it's just a perspective. So for me, not writing but thinking about a character is also a passion, because storytelling includes, first of all, world building, character building, and then writing, right? So I think if you have a creative sort of a mindset, or if you have the passion for even comedy, for example, you try to find sense of humor even in the most darkest of hours.
Yeah.
right? So I think that is where the balance comes into play. The only reason a lot of people might not be having the opportunity to explore it is because they've not explored their creative passion from the start itself, from the scratch. And it could be even singing, or it could be even like painting. If you start doing something every day, or start creating something every day, so the days when you can't do it, somehow your mind is so wired to think in that way that you think, can I go home and like de-stress by painting? And suddenly you have this idea that comes in, okay, today I had a bad day, the boss was very angry on me, what am I thinking? And you start painting something, and suddenly you get something that you never imagined you can get. And
you relate your real life experiences into the outlet. I mean, that's why it's called a creative outlet, because you relay all your experiences when you feel emotionally drained, when you have a bad day with maybe potentially a boss or a coworker. You kind of you have that, and then you translate that into your your books or your characters and stuff like that.
True. And I think what happens is that in creativity, be it storytelling or anything else, there's always a part of you that will come in. You can never be dishonest. Like, you'll be forced to not be dishonest, because the moment you start writing an idea or something that you're very passionate about, somehow your real life experience will come into play, because that's the only knowledge you have. Maybe you'll steal something from a movie or a drama that you've watched recently, or your friend's life or something. There'll always be that element, but there's always going to be a part of you in that. So if I've written a book, or if I've written a play, there are elements where people can say, okay, that is Prateek, and that happened. Like, even in the last play, my friends could say, oh, you used to say that to us. The dialogue that you said, that was something you said to us, because that just came out and I never knew about it, right? So you can never be dishonest. If you're dishonest with your work is not good. And that even you would know. You'll be the first critic who'll say that I don't own that.
Well, that's very interesting. I think just a question for me personally as well. I'm very curious. So I also have a creative outlet. Like, I love to like film YouTube videos, but I've monetized that. So like now, when I was working, it felt like a chore, because for me it was so difficult to switch off and then switch on into that creative outlet. It was not that easy in terms of coming back home and then being like, now I'm going to film a video, because I had so many things in my mind about work. I could just not think about YouTube. I was thinking about not doing it, which made me feel guilty, but I was not in that process of thinking about characters or thinking about my next YouTube video. And I feel like when you monetize something as well, it just becomes more of a chore, and then it just you feel so bad that you can't be happy about a hobby that you once loved.
True.
And I know that you also like do theater, and there are people involved, and you also, it's not monetized, but some sort of thing is public. Like, do you ever feel like it's difficult to switch on and switch off, and also like, does it feel like a chore sometimes that you have to get done?
Like, I would totally agree. It's not easy to switch on, switch off, but it's a skill that it's like a muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
You have to evolve it. You have to keep practicing. Same goes for theater, right? Because I can be a good writer. Actors can be good, but in the initial 2-3 rehearsals, you will see that even the script is bad, even the actors are bad, the stage is bad, nothing is working, because everyone is figuring it out, right? So that sort of tells you how life is all about, right? The first few days in a new job, new relationship, new entrepreneurship venture, new VC, any relationship that is new, or any work that you do new, is always, that change is always difficult. That change sort of mirrors your insecurities, your fear, your sort of condemnation for yourself, your self-doubt. But then over a period of time, if you just sort of sustain through that, or endeavor through that, that persistence will teach you, okay, it's fine, there are mistakes made, but then eventually your skills will come into play, your mindset will come into play, your perspective will come into play, and then you start figuring out stuff, and then you start connecting the dots.
It's like what you said, like, growth is not linear, right? Like, when you start something, when you start your own, company, or you start your YouTube video, or you start your own play, things will never be perfect on the first try. I think out of recording, you have said a couple of times, we started this season in our bedrooms, right? And now we have a whole, the video production is definitely much better, I would say. So I think in that sense, like, growth is not linear, and that's where, when people face setbacks and failures in the beginning, start of their lifeline of their company or their project, that's where most people give up, because that's where people are like, oh, it's so hard, I don't know how to improve, I can't do this anymore, right? And they just give up. And you find that those who really push through and navigate those growth, navigates those setbacks, are the ones that really succeed and push on. of course, like, you will face even bigger setbacks to come in the future, but you learn to grow with it.
Yeah. And I think, just to shortly answer her question, because I couldn't answer that, the monetization part of it, right? Monetization of your creative outlets, monetization of your passion. It is true that monetization, or the mindset of monetization or commercialization, can adulterate whatever passion you're following. That's fine. But you cannot be a socialist in a capitalist world, right? It is a capitalist world. There is cost attached to a podcast, to a theater, and all that stuff. So even as a writer, director, or actors or something like that, if you're there and there's lights on and there's a stage and there's audience coming and there's people arranging it, there is cost involved, and you have to make sure that no one is at loss, right? So I think those are the things where you figure out ways to make it break even.
Yeah.
And I think that's where your business mindset comes into play, where that's where your stakeholders come into play, the sponsorships, the people producing it.
Right.
And other than that, to have the ability, like for me at least, the advantage that comes from my lifestyle is to balance my well-paying job with my creativity. But for some people, that's not the luxury, right? Some people are full-time freelancers into this. So for them to come and do something for free already tells you the mindset they come with. Like, they are really passionate about it.
Yeah.
But they cannot sustain it because they need a paying job,
Yeah.
right? So this becomes their life, be it theater, be it writing, or anything, or comedy, or stand-up, becomes the avenue for them to polish their skills, because now they get a live feedback loop from the audience, and then that could lead them to a bigger movie or an ad, or some stand-up gig with some bigger comedian, and that will pay them, right? But then they come for that journey. They don't strike out in the first two go. They don't strike out in the first two open mics. If they're passionate about comedy, if they're passionate about theater, if they're passionate about writing, they don't strike out in the first two rejections. They persist through rejections.
Exactly.
And if you think about it, that's what even relationships are all about.
Yeah.
Right? You persist through relationships, because if you're rejected in a relationship, or if you broke up in a relationship, it's not because there was something lacking in you or lacking in them. It was just because the lack that you might have had is not filled by them, or their lack is not filled by you, right? And that is fine, because that's a different space to be in. What you're finally going to settle with is someone who can understand that lack in you, can fulfill that lack in you, but you can also fulfill that lack, and it's like a 50-50 partnership. That is all life is all about, be it the pursuit of money, pursuit of love, pursuit of partnerships. It's all about making sure there's this balance of, okay, this is my lack and deficiencies, and these are my strengths. This is your strengths and deficiencies. Oh, here's the vibe. Oh, we are vibing. And that is how it works out, right? And I think that is how I view creative endeavors. That is how I view professions. Because at the end of the day, even if you talk about a corporate world, the only reason you get hired into a team or hired into some particular job is because that team is trying to fulfill that gap, right? Or else why would they need you?
Yeah.
Right? Why are they opening that position? Why are they spending, say, some amount of money to hire you? Because they want to fulfill that gap. The question is, when you're interviewing, are you aware of that gap? So can you let the interviews, or can you signal to the interview, hey, I did my CFA, or I did my master's, and this is the gap in your team, or this is the gap that the company is trying to fulfill, or this is the vision of the company, and I think this is where I can add value. That's it. You already cracked the interview, because you've already told the interviewer that you're aware of what skills you are going to bring and what the team needs. And that is how life is all about, right? You're just filling gaps everywhere.
I think that is one of the biggest problems. I think people nowadays are not fully aware of their own strengths.
Yeah.
Let alone to speak about them in interviews or social settings. Talk about personal. We talked about this in our last episode, in our season last finale.
It's about selling
episode,
yourself.
About how do you talk about yourself, present yourself the best life possible. Yeah. And you talked a lot about being self-aware. So have you done anything specific to be more self-aware in your life in terms of your strengths and your weaknesses?
Yeah, I think loneliness brings that. So as I told you, I started when I was in my boarding school and all that. I was a bit lonely and all that stuff. But I think the advantage of being lonely in a good way, I'm saying lonely where you're seeking solitude, is that you're very introspective. Yeah, you're very introspective of your actions and words. And there are times where you'll take actions that you didn't intend to, but then you happen to take it, and then you realize what the motivation, and the motivation could be a desire, right? It could be lust, it could be greed, it could be anything. There are times when it's a bad thing not to kiss that guy or a girl, but then you just want to do it because there's no opportunity other than this. They will go away, or you'll go away, or something like that.
You do it in self-interest.
So you're gambling. And the moment you gamble, you just don't know the outcome. But you still want to gamble because there's this degree of desire behind it, right? And I think that is fine, as long as you have the strength to face the consequences. And that is, like, if you talk about, like, my first book was a juxtaposition or a practical approach to Buddhism and Vedanta, which is a Hindu philosophy. And the biggest thing about both of them is that they talk about desire through karma, right? And karma, what people think is whatever you do is going to hit you back. No. It's the consequences of the action you take. It could be good or bad. You never know. There are, like, in a very plain layman way, there are gangsters who are living a very good life.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm trying to say is that karma or anything that we talk about, it's not about the consequences that are going to hit you back. It's the consequences of the actions you take. Right? And the awareness comes either through the failures of those actions, so you become more and more self-aware. Oh, I shouldn't do that. Oh, I shouldn't smoke. I shouldn't drink. I shouldn't do that because I can't do that. My body cannot sustain it. Maybe some other's body can, but not mine. The moment you start understanding it, suddenly you know, okay, this is bad for me, this is good for me. It may not be bad and good for the other person, but for me it is bad and good. You know, and that is where you start seeing, okay, this is bad, this is good. Because life is not binary decisions, but you're trying to simplify it to those binary decisions, right? And then based on that, you bucket your personality, and that is where the self-awareness starts. So self-awareness is never, oh, today I'm going to be self-aware.
Exactly.
It's never going to be like that. You need that feedback loop. You need to be always naked to receive that feedback.
I think it's such a familiar topic to me, because I grew up with my mom always saying, like, you know, whatever you do, you know, she has also mostly allowed me to do the things that I want to do, right? Be it good, be it bad, and of course, you know, sometimes your parents can't control everything you do. And, you know, the one thing she's always taught me was, you know, you take consequences for your own action. Whatever you do, it's fine. You know, I can't be there for you all the time. I can't look over your shoulder all the time. But at the end of the day, whatever decision you make, whatever action you take, you need to bear the own consequences of those results, you know? And I grew up with that mindset, right?
Yep.
So it makes you become more intentional with what you do. Everything that you do, every word you say, every action you take, it becomes very intentional because you know at the back of your mind, okay, whatever consequences to this I'm taking, I'm gonna have to take it. You know, it's not anyone else's fault, it's mine. You know.
And I think just to add to that point, right? You can't do that every day.
Yeah, of course.
Because then what happens is that we get scared of the extremes.
Yeah.
We desire the extremes.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, be it money, be it love, be it lust, be it anything, any emotion you pick up, we are insecure and fearful of the extremes of it, right? Even though maybe in our life we'll never get to experience it. Oh, I cannot be as rich as Elon Musk. Oh, I cannot be as successful as that, you know, Hollywood actor. Or maybe I'm not as beautiful as that lady over there or that gent over there. You know, oh, I cannot drink as much as that person. Those comparisons, where those comparisons come, because you're always thinking that society is only appreciative of the extremes, right? What you're not understanding is this society is appreciative of the mundane as well, right? What social media highlights is the extremes, but those extremes are temporary. There's a permanent life around it, right? The moment you become normalized with that permanent life around it, automatically you will have extreme moments in your life. Right? And those will be something that you'll cherish. Like, for me, a theatre play with 20 actors, we collaborative coming together, for me that was an extreme, because I could have never imagined coming to London and doing a theatre play. And that is where I share credit with all of them who were ever part of it, right? Because what I'm trying to get to is that any emotion that you feel, don't look at the extremes of it. So same goes for self-awareness. Don't go to the extremes of it. Yeah. And that is where Buddhism talks about the middle way. You don't look at the extreme of self-aware. There are times when you just want to let go. You want your group of people to decide the place to eat, the place to drink, the place to dance.
Of course.
You just want to be there. That's it. You don't want to make decisions, and that is fine. Because those are the days you want to relax.
Exactly.
Right? So self-awareness is something that you candidly do. Not do it as, oh, it's a strict discipline and you wake up at 4 a.m.
Subconsciously you just do
You
it.
wake up at 4 a.m. and you do breathing exercises and you go for that run and then 5. If you want to do it, do it. It's good. It's a good lifestyle to have.
Yeah.
But if you think there are certain other things you can do, explore that. Maybe you want to play cello at midnight. Do that. But make sure that the neighbor is there. But do that. But I think, it's finding balance, right? And I think balance is very difficult if there are certain things you're still working on, be it a career, finding a job, all that stuff. But yeah, you have to give it time. You have to be patient with it.
Yeah.
I think it's also a lot about allowing yourself for change to happen to you.
Yeah.
I think you have become self-aware when you try multiple things as well. So like I think it's more about how you cope with change and how your relationship is built with change over the time, that you become very comfortable with it.
Your example, right? Resigning at this age, changing geography altogether. Like same goes for Audrey. Both of you making the decision of resignation, which a lot of people try to do in their midlife but can't do, and that is called midlife crisis.
It really is.
And you had an adolescent crisis. So like
we are
speak about that.
All the time.
Oh god. Yeah, and I mean like this period of time has been a big change for us. For me personally, I'm pretty sure you're even more, you know, you're changing the whole geography. But like, you know, I think I said at the beginning of the podcast where, you know, this period of time I learned a lot. You know, I learned that growth isn't linear. You start developing certain lifestyles for yourself, for myself, that I think would suit me well, that I didn't really think about when I was working, because my entire life was just about my job at that point, right? And, you know, you start thinking about there's more to life than just work. You know, it's about the people around you, developing a relationship with the people around you. You know, I'm so far away from family, allocating time for that family, you know, and I want to see the world. I want to live a life that I won't regret when I'm like in my mid-40s, you know, and my identity shouldn't just all be around work, you know, and I think when I was working my 9 to 5, when I was working my corporate job, it was all about that. And when I resigned, it was really an eye-opening experience for me. I changed drastically in terms of, you know, all of a sudden there was nothing to do, you know, apart from, you know, studying, apart from finding a new job, but, you know, day to day, right? When you're so focused on your 9 to 5 and then have a structured day, all of a sudden there's no structure. Yeah. So I felt so uncertain. I felt so like, oh no, what am I supposed to do? And within that, you find your own structure in life. Like you said, being self-aware, like you wake up, you can do everything. Yeah. You can do anything you want, right? And then you be more intentional with what you want to do within the day, you know?
Yeah. And I think that is like, because you've jumped into the unknown, which is scary.
Exactly.
Where your insecurities are at its max, where your fear is at its max, where your self-doubt is at its max. You realize that you don't even have your parents around you now.
You're not really helping Prateek. Like literally you're not helping anyone
so
right now.
What I'm trying to say is that at that particular moment, that is where you're so self-aware automatically.
Yeah.
You know that this is happening to me. The question is the perception of that, or the decision you take after that. You go on LinkedIn or you go on Facebook or you just call up a friend and you're like, do you know someone in this field? Or can you get, you know, if someone can mentor me? Or you ask a question to someone. Maybe you reach out to 100 and 150 people and one person replies to you. What I'm trying to say is that these are the moments where you try to find mentors. These are the places where you take the initiative to find someone who can teach you or like tell you, okay, this is the path you can take, or maybe someone to network with for a new career path or something like that. What I'm getting to is that it is much better to do that than to just stay at one trajectory and not, you know, choose or not ever explore what other things you could have done at this age, right? Because as you start growing and having those family responsibilities, which I also imagine could be when you have those family responsibilities, when you have a kid and all that stuff, like there are people who take chances even then. But what I'm trying to say is that it takes a lot more energy, a lot more courage, and a lot more time to sort of divert from there. So I think this is a good age where you're putting yourself in the unknown, and you're very aware that these things are going to happen, but you're playing a gamble on it, right? And I think this is good.
No, I think I totally agree, and I feel like you make decisions, right? Those decisions lead to change, and I feel like the way I make decisions is understanding how much faith I have in myself. I think that's basically what helps me in making decisions like this. And I'm not promoting like quitting jobs. Like that is not the intention at all. What I'm trying to say is
quit your job.
No. It takes a lot. I genuinely feel like you have to have faith in yourself and reassure yourself every single day and like understand your past experiences. If you are able to handle this, I do not think this is everyone's cup of tea. And it's not the best thing in the world to do either. It's more about just reassuring yourself that maybe this is not for me and I'm okay with facing the consequences.
Like just to add there, right? Like as you said, you're not promoting quitting job, because the only reason you quit your job is because somewhere you had a slight plan. You know you're getting into the unknown, but you knew what unknown would look like, right? You knew that this is the path I might take. right? So you had this. It's not like you just quit the job.
Yeah.
It's not like you woke up one day and you're like, I'm quitting my job.
Yeah,
You're not
I mean,
frustrated.
I mean, if you want to take a look at that, right? It's we don't exactly know what we want in the future yet. Like you said, we jumped into the unknown, but at least now we know what we don't want. You know, and that's
We've eliminated.
Yeah.
And I
that's
think
really good.
the way that I look at it is, even though there is unknown, like the way you become comfortable with it is by making some of it known.
Yeah.
And if you have a slight idea about small things, but like, or big things where you want to live, or what your future self would look like, or what your day would look like, then you try to like put gambles on like seeing basically what sticks to the wall and like what doesn't, you know.
For sure. And I think that is where, I think this is Matthew McConaughey's speech from the Academy Awards when he won the best actor, and he says, "My hero is 10 years ahead of who I am."
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you're building those stepping stones. You can never reach there because he'll always be 10 years ahead of you.
Exactly.
But that's fine. You have something to sort of work, but it's always you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not someone else you're comparing with. It's not someone else's life that you want to live, but you're just waking up to your own self.
Yeah, totally agree. And I feel like whenever I like panic about my decisions, which happens a lot of times, I think the one thing that helps me all the time is asking myself, what's the worst that can happen?
True.
And that truly has changed my life, like in more ways than I can imagine. And like, it's like, what's the worst? Like, it's a win-win for me. I learn either way, and like I'll move past it. Like, it's fine, you know. And I think that's why, like, I want to ask you, like, how do you cope up with change? Because, like, I think everyone, like, has so many things changing around them all the time.
Like, maybe I'll take an example of relationships, right? Like, for a change, right? When we say short-term, long-term, you know, situationships, commitments, all that stuff, I'll leave all those labels aside.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about humans in relationship.
Right.
Okay? If I'm sort of on with someone, like where I want to like date them or be with them and all that, irrelevant of how long that relationship is going to last, you come with a mindset that you're lonely, and you're having this ambition, and you want the other person to be in that journey. Now, when I started in this, is when I started dating and all that stuff at whatever age I started, the biggest mistake I did was I was not honest with myself. I was not honest in that sort of pursuit because I had this ambition, this greed, this selfishness, that I never sort of understood the space of the other person. And, you know, when you hear all these sort of self-help podcasts and these hustle culture and these big people who achieved, and you always see them lonely and, you know, working hard and all that, but you never learn about relationships from them.
No.
What you really learn relationships from is your friends, your family, and all that stuff, right? So I think what I really learned in that whole process is that stop lying to yourself, right? Even if the life expectancy of an average person is 75, 85 years, the chances that you're going to lie to other people is very high still. You want to cancel that house party, you don't want to attend that meeting, you don't want to go to, you know, that dancing club or something like that. So you'll make up some reason. You don't want to be with some person, or maybe even in relationships, you don't want to go to that date, or you don't want to continue that date, and that's fine. That's okay. I can understand many people do lie on that. But at least to yourself, if there is this moment where you realize, okay, now I have to be like purely 100% honest with who I am, irrelevant of whether that self-awareness still seeps in, but you're very honest to yourself. Oh, you shouldn't do this, you should do that, or you shouldn't treat the other person that way. Leave it to that. You know, don't take up their space, don't take up their energy. This is your space, this is your energy. If you're a loner, you're a loner. Accept that, right? And then if your ambition requires you to fight every day alone, do that, right? Because you've chosen that ambition. That was your decision to make, not their decision to make. If you enter a relationship with that mindset, you start respecting the other person's space, and automatically you're out of this whole loop of situationships, short term, long term. You're just there with the other person, and the other person also understands that. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You move on, right? What I'm trying to get to is that honesty with yourself makes you very aware of the emotions that you have and the emotions that the other person is going to bring in. So breakups, even though hard, no matter whenever they happen, you still have an understanding, okay, this is what happened. You know, this is why the breakup happened. Maybe because I was, you know, dishonest here. Maybe there was no space. Maybe we were not vibing. Maybe we were not equal partners. Maybe there was no commitment and all that stuff. But that honesty to self is very important. And that even translates into your relationship with your parents, be it professional colleagues, your friends. Be honest with yourself so that your best version is always out. And then other than that, the society is always going to put a layer on you. The onion peel, right? Be it the CFA, the masters, the satellite, the theater, the movie. Those are all layers. Love comes from the person beneath. Like my first book, and even the play talks about this. It calls The House of Mirrors. My book's name is House of Mirrors, where no matter the number of reflections you look at, and I take the example of Buddha or God standing in the center and saying, it's just me. I'm the only person in the center, and they're like these different reflections of mine, these different personalities of mine. But this is me at the center, observing each of them, playing each of them, and just laughing at each of them. So that is where the Shakespearean sort of word comes in. Every world is a stage, and all men and women are merely actors. Right?
Do you have a romantic relationship at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Do you plan to?
I do plan to, but I think I want to make sure that it's honest.
Right.
Yeah. So irrelevant of what it turns into, maybe it turns into something of a long-term commitment, maybe it turns into something of marriage, because Indian weddings are fun.
They are lovely. Oh my god.
But I know one thing is that my mindset right now is to be very, very honest with whatever I get into.
Right.
Not that I've been honest till now, but now I want to be. Right. I want to make sure that I want to correct myself.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're almost to the end of the podcast. It's, I think, probably a full hour now that we've been chatting. But yeah, it's been amazing hearing your stories and, you know, your journey from when you were a kid, making all this, you know, maturing at such a young age, you know, taking part in the day-to-day decisions with your parents and helping them out, growing to the person you are today, having this banking job, and also doing the thing that you love. I think it's inspirational, and I know a little, you know, I would love to learn from that a little bit as well. You know, so thank you for coming down.
No, thank you so much.
Being part of this podcast with us. Yeah.
But before we let you go, like, we'd love to ask you if there's any piece of advice that you'd give to, like, everyone out there wanting to be successful at one point, based on your own journey.
No, I think just to summarize the whole conversation, right? It just comes to this simple word that I follow is called wake up. And it's like every morning that you wake up, you're sort of living the systemized life that the society has created around us, right? There's a lot of decisions that the society has taken for us, but there are moments where you can create something of your own, your original, authentic idea, be it through writing, be it even in your professional innovation that you bring into your professional work, or something like that. But be very, very aware of what kind of life you're living. And it's okay that a lot of your things are systemized or operationalized by the world. And that's fine, because that gives you a security or safety net. But then every single day, give a me time, right? Think about your relationship. Because just to give you an example of relationships, I'm at a point right now in my life where I have enough money, a good sort of balance for my family, like my parents. Being a lone child, that is my priority. I'm very happy with my creative life. So there's this balance. So everything that I wanted to check, I've checked, right? So now I'm very ready for being like 100% into a relationship. I've woken up to it. And this is only because over the year I made sure that there's this consistency, that other than whatever life the society designed for me, by doing my education right, getting that scholarship, getting that job, I made sure that I gave time to my writing, to theater, to investments, to learning from my friends, from learning from self-help books or financial advisors and all that stuff, just to make sure that there is this enough capital and liquidity. So waking up means that you take control or ownership
of your life,
right? And that is automatically will mirror your originality to you.
I absolutely love that. I think you said something about, like, most of your life is auto-tuned, and like you wake up, you do your makeup, you get ready, you go to the work, come back, eat dinner, tidy up. So there's only so much time you have for yourself, and if like you wake up during that time and like do things for you, like that could literally change your entire world. And it's about being aware of that small time that you have and like not wasting it.
Yeah. And I think that is where the compounding thing that every financial podcast talks about, right? Compounding.
Yeah.
So even this podcast should talk about compounding. And that is what compounding is all about, because every day, no matter how much you try, because the life is designed in such a way that you'll only have few hours and some energy to at least do something of your own. And that's fine. Every single day, if you can invest, or even once a week or something, if you can invest in creating something, over a period of time, it's gonna grow huge.
Yeah.
And it could be monetized. It could give you some return. You never know.
Yeah.
But give it a try. It's the unknown.
Exactly. Just do it.
Just
Just do it.
Just do it.
No, but yeah, I think that is the end of our podcast, Prateek.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, literally taking out the time and doing this with us. Literally doing
No,
this
like
with us.
I should say this, that this is a conversation that, like I said in the start of the podcast, had I had it a decade ago, maybe I would have been thinking about life very differently. Obviously, when we say maturity came in early, it's a very loose label to give, but it's more of an awareness that came in very early.
Yeah.
So I think if like people of your age who are gonna watch this podcast, and I'm part of this generation, as well, I'm same age, I'm not old. Comment, tag them, discuss on a Reddit group,
Exactly.
have a forum discussion, but be a part of the debate or initiate that debate, because somewhere someone in this world still requires a reminding that they can do it, and maybe you can be the guiding force for them, and maybe you can be the mentor to them. And it's always good to learn from people, be it young or old. Everybody has a say now, right? Every person has a say now, and there's so much there to learn. So it's like, I think this podcast is a good platform for it.
Yeah.
But I think you can comment or maybe do a Reddit or all that stuff, but I think that debate is necessary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, like we said at the beginning as well, this is our vision, right? We want to help and hopefully have, an audience that listens to us, that we're able to remind them that, we're all humans, right? No matter how successful in different people in different stages of their life, they're all going to have some kind of feelings of loneliness, feelings of uncertainty, insecurity as they navigate life themselves, regardless of whatever industry, how you grew up, where you grew up. Everyone's going to go through the same kind of emotions at one point in their lives.
Yep.
So I think that's what we want to achieve. That's why we have this podcast. And you are, I would say, probably the best first guest we had.
Oh, thank you so much.
First guest.
I feel like some things that we spoke about today, like maybe all of us like might have known about those things in the back of our head, but like it's good to hear someone else's story so beautifully and then like get reminded of those things subconsciously. And trust me, like when I hear stories like yours and let's like have a conversation like we did today, like some things I might change my daily routine based off our conversation today, which I would not even realize, but I'll just do it subconsciously because of what we spoke about today.
Yeah.
And for me that is so powerful, and that's why I just love just sitting down, just like unwinding
Makes sense.
your journey.
Yeah.
you
Let's
know?
unwind.
Let's unwind.
Let's unwind.
But yeah, thank you so much, Prateek, for coming on
Really
here.
appreciate the
We
time.
truly appreciate the time. You've been lovely.
Yeah.
Prateek also has a play coming up, by the way. This podcast is airing on the 7th of March.
Yeah.
Prateek is a writer and a director and an actor, and he has a lovely play coming out in London. Do you want to talk about the play?
Yeah, on the 10th of March this year, we are going to come out with FITRAT, which is we are London's first Bollywood theatre group.
Yay.
And it is being produced by the King's College India Society, as well as Mukesh Chhabra, who's one of the biggest casting directors from India. And we are doing it at the Bush House. The tickets will be available from this week onwards, and we'll put the link. But my Insta handle is author Shukla ji, so you'll get all the updates.
Author Shukla ji.
Yeah. We'll link all his credentials and all your handles, websites,
With the
everything
link
you have
for the
below.
tickets. Yeah, so
Yeah.
please buy the tickets on the 10th of March.
If you're in London, yeah.
Exactly. If you're in London.
I'm still very upset. I'm not in London, that's why. But yeah, I think that's the end of our podcast,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank
Well,
you so much.
Yes, this is season 2, episode 1, with our first guest and many more guests to come.
No, but yeah, guys, thank you so much for staying tuned till the end if you have. We are very, very, very happy to be back, and we hope that you're happy that we are back as well. We've had so much fun
Exactly.
doing this again and continue to do this for a very, very long time, so stay tuned. But this was Audrey and Malika, episode 1, season 2, Discovering Who You Can Be.
And
So,
let's unwind.
see you next time.
Bye.
Much love. Bye.